Now it's time for perspective. And my guest today is a man who, until 2 years ago, lived a happy and contented life. He and his wife had moved to the northern suburbs of Kyiv. They had a nice house, a garden, a cute dog. As a writer, he'd even been putting the finishing touches with his father to a book about Ukrainian literature. There were rumours, of course, that Russia was about to invade, but people dismissed them or said that would be in the east and they had little to fear. Well, that all changed at dawn on February the 24th as they were awakened by loud explosions. Well, Oleksandr Mykhed is the author of 10 books, a member as well of PEN Ukraine, an association that protects the liberty of expression, and he joins me now on the programme. Thanks very much for being with us. First of all, tell us what those first few hours, days were like when your previously happy life was basically turned upside down.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me. Uh, Me and my wife, we've lived in Hostomel, which is 16 kilometers from Kiev, and this is became just the center of the invasion just from the early scratch. Just in something like 8 a.m. in 24th of February, you could hear that Russians started bombarding the Hostomel airport, and you could smell even the gunpowder in the air. And my parents, they stayed in Bucha, and we've talked to them, and they said that they are elderly people, and they said like we're nothing to be afraid of, so we will stay. So we've evacuated in the evening of 24th, and my parents stayed in Bucha, and they stayed there until mid-March. So they stayed under the Russian occupation in Bucha for almost 3 weeks.
And just having your
So
life sort
yeah,
of completely turned over in such a short period of
yeah,
time must have been incredibly dramatic.
yeah, because there was a feeling that the history is just enrolling in front of our eyes. Just from the early seconds, we've understood that this is probably the most important that might happen to us. And just week into later that, in the beginning of March, the Russian projectile hit our house in Hostomel, and so we've lost the house. And yeah, and Russian invaders, they were in the our town apartments in our residency. They've been in the morning of 25th. So they took a position and they shoot all the cars that were riding on the crossroad of our near our townhouses, and they shoot around 5 or 6 cars and all the people that were there as well. And that lasted for 5, 6 hours. And this is the argument for those who are telling that Russians came not for killing civilians. They did this from the early hours of the invasion.
So inevitably, I suppose, after what you'd seen, what had happened to you, you decided that you needed to join the war effort and join the army yourself.
Yeah, I finished the first text that I called The Language of War. I finished the first essay about the full-scale invasion. I sent it to my agent, and then I went to the armed forces just 4 days into invasion. And I guess this was 3rd or 4th of March. The first essay was published in the Financial Times, and I was already in the barracks trying to understand how to hold the rifle and what my duty will be.
I mean, that's incredible, isn't it, that you've been able to try and keep that writing going? I mean, it's obviously very important to you that you do that as well as fighting for your country.
Yeah, definitely, because that was the idea that if Russians are taking like something in terms of the physical and they're trying to change our identity and our behaviors through their genocidal acts of violence and their atrocities. So there is only one identity that I have, that is writer. And that's why, starting from the early hours of 24th of February 2022, I started writing and keeping. I don't consider this as a diary. It's rather a chronicle, because it contains a lot of voices, and it contains the cases of the atrocities and war crimes committed by Russians. And I kept this chronicle for first 13 months until the March of 2023. And it became this Noah's Ark of the reality that happened to us, because I wanted to contain like this puzzle of of our new reality. Because
And
the war started in 2014, but the full-scale invasion changed a lot, like everything for us.
And you mentioned your parents earlier on, in their 70s, aren't they? I mean, it's been incredibly hard, and they've got themselves into some very difficult situations.
Yeah, definitely. They stayed in Bucha, and they were lucky enough to evacuate in the last days when there was a so-called green corridor. Yeah, but and they now they are not living in Bucha, and they don't want to come back for all these months, because this is really hard for them
Well, I'm glad to hear,
to be
obviously,
in
that
these
they've
circumstances.
so far at least managed to survive it all. I mean, do you see a way out of this war?
Uh, Russia should stop this. This is the ball is on their side. They should fail. They should go through the process of the trials. They have to go through the process of denazification, through the process of deputinization. They have to understand that this is not only Putin's war. They have to understand that this is the war of the whole Russian nation as it is, and they have to learn lessons out of this. Because if this will stop just with no trials and no processes in terms of the political changing of their mind, we will have the same invasion in 2, 3, 4 years. And the same as their imperialistic view, it's not about the only Ukrainian territories. It is about Poland, it's about Lithuania, Finland, you name it. All the countries, all those countries that have um, the borders that are near the Russian territories, they are in danger. And this is not only Ukrainian war; it is the war of the whole world to stop Putin and stop Russianism.
Obviously, listening to your story, it's very emotional. What would you say to those of us here watching in the West? I mean, I assume at least that the supply of weapons is crucial. What else?
I would say that the most important for our partners, our friends, and those who support us is to not get tired. As our defenders in the front, they're suffering, and they're trying their best each day, 24 hours, 7 days a week, and this is a really tough. Examination, tough survival for several generations of Ukrainians. And my first message is just please don't get tired. Secondly, please remember then when you don't have any news about Ukraine, they're still happening because invasion is still going on. We're losing infrastructure, we're losing civilians because Russians are making a genocidal act on the huge scale, killing civilians and our defenders as well. And as well as we are losing territories because Russia don't stop, doesn't stop. And please don't forget about Ukraine.
Oleksandr Mykhed, thanks very much for joining us on the programme today. Great
Thank
to
you
hear
so
your
much.
story, and the best of luck to you and your family, of course, as well, as the
Thank you.
conflict, of course, continues. Hopefully not for much longer, but who knows?